Corinthians 13, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, I am become a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I can remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. And we'll go ahead and open in prayer. Dear Lord, we just pray for wisdom and clarity as we look at a beautiful chapter that tells us about love. Just help pray for wisdom, that you'll give me the words to say, and you'll open our ears to what your word has to teach. And help us throughout this year as we continue to get a better understanding of what you mean by love and how it's different than what the world teaches. And we pray this all in your name. Amen. All right, so 1 Corinthians 13, we are going to be looking at today our service in love. How many of you like to win? Be honest, I do, and I'll be the first to raise my hand. You really like to win. How many of you have experienced what I've experienced? When I was, my wife and I first got married, we had a couple of friends of ours, really good friends. And we would get together every now and then and we would play games. That can be dangerous for a friendship. You kind of know where I'm going, especially if you have 2 or 3 people in the group that really like to win. Well, this one day, and this is the one time I remember of all the others, we were going to play Monopoly. Let me tell you, that game is brutal. If you got somebody, how many of you have ever played Monopoly with somebody that really is a hardcore Monopoly player? And you could be their son, daughter, husband, wife, it doesn't matter what it is, what your relationship is, they absolutely will just crucify you in that game. Yes. There's no mercy. Yes. All right? But in any case, this is kind of what we're looking at. We kind of live in a culture that we love to win. I love to win. You know, I remember playing basketball. I love to win. I remember when we had a baseball team, not here. The church had a baseball team back then. There was church baseball leagues. Were really big back then. Actually, it was softball. And we would play, it was actually bigger than the school league. And we would play, it was pretty cool. You'd get a bunch of people together. Well, there were times I kind of was glad that people didn't watch us, because here's 2 churches playing baseball or softball. And sometimes it was like, okay, are we churches or not? Because we like to win. Well, Paul likes to win. And we're not going to take time to look at it, but Paul talks about how he, in Corinthians, as a matter of fact, and I think it's 1 Corinthians 9, he talks about how he runs to win. He'll say in 1 Corinthians 15 that he works harder than all the other apostles. And, you know, he's competitive, and I'm convinced he was competitive. I think that was part of his nature. Well, this chapter plays off of that desire, because Paul is going to talk about some things. And so let's kind of get into it. We've talked about the different types of love. And I don't want you to, I don't expect you to memorize all the words, but a couple of them should be pretty familiar. Agape, most of you have already heard of agape. I've had a few of you talk to me that you, either a parent or in church or whatever, that you've been taught about agape love. You got phileo, which is brotherly love, Philadelphia. So there's different kinds of love. And we've also talked about that God has expectations. Now, in specific, he was talking to Peter, but I don't think I'm twisting anything in the Bible to say God expects us to have the same type of love that he was asking Peter. I think, in a sense, he's asking all of us, do you agape me? Do you? And unfortunately, most of us, at best, say, I phileo you. There's very few of us who really love God to the level that he wants us to love him. To the level that he actually loves us. So just keep that in mind. This is really important as we go through the year, especially what we're going to be talking about today. We've also talked about service. Now we're continuing to talk about service. When Jesus was talking with Peter, there's 3 lessons he wanted to teach him. First of all, that as Jesus would say, feed my lambs. All right. The service, whatever it is, the praise and worship team, maybe you volunteer in your church and you do things in the church, you work in a Sunday school class, you work in VBS. It isn't your class, they're not your kids. It's not your ministry, it's God's. Ultimately speaking, it's God's. He's given you stewardship of the ministry. Also, it's a sacrifice, and that'll become clearer throughout the year. And it should be, our focus should be on God and the ministry He's given us. And Paul gives a lot of really, if we had time, we could really kind of chase that. Paul gives a lot of examples where he is, he would say, I press towards the mark of the prize of the high calling of God. So when he was running, and he would, again, that's why I think he's competitive, all these athletic terms he uses, he's saying, listen, I have my eye on one thing and one thing only, God the finish line, in my ministry, and what God has called me to do. And that's why he would say things like, I desire to be with God, but yet I desire to live. I'm in a strait between two desires. Love affects how we serve. But it affects how we serve a little deeper, and we'll be talking about that in just a minute. Now, last time we talked about we talked about two forms of worldly love. First of all, misdirected love. It's a danger for all of us, me, you, anybody here, that if we're not careful, the things of the world will attract us. Now, in and of their own, they may not be bad. Some are, and some aren't. But some, fame, fortune, fleshly desires, what makes me feel good. Peer pressure, that's a big one in all ages, even after you graduate. A lot of people talk about high school and college. I can tell you, being a young man in my early 20s in a working environment with a bunch of guys, there's a lot of peer pressure. Hey, Troy, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? We're going out tonight before the meeting. We're going to do such and such. Why don't you come with us? Peer pressure. So if we're not careful, we have this misdirected love. We start falling in love with what the world has. And it starts to supersede what God wants for us. And that's why he would say, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. But a misdirected love also leads to this guy. Okay? Jokingly called it the Grinch syndrome. And misdirected love becomes a false love. And that's talked about in 1 John 2:16, the desire of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, and the pride of life. So we decide what love is something that makes me feel good, something that I see that I want. Now Mrs. Poisson isn't here for me to say this and laugh about it, but I'll use it as an example. I'm looking at Mrs. Gumprecht. She wasn't there, but Mrs. Faith came in today. I don't know what was going on, but she brought a cheesecake. A cheesecake that was chocolate caramel or something like that. But it looked really, really good. Well, that is the desire of the eyes. Because she was handing that. I'm standing at the door, and I was being polite because she was coming in. There's steps, they're really narrow. She's coming in as I'm trying to leave. So I do the gentleman thing, and I step back. And she's bringing this cake in, and this cheesecake, and she's handing it. And she says, this is Mrs. Poisson's. I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. And it wasn't a whole cheesecake. It was a big piece, though. I have the desire of the eyes. I really like the look of that cheesecake. Now, my cheesecake is usually blueberry or strawberry or something like that. But just cheesecake, I mean, all right. So the desire of the eyes, the desire of the flesh, it makes me feel good. It looks good, therefore I want it. The pride of life, I deserve it. No offense to you guys. There's one piece of cheesecake left. I'm going to get it because I deserve it.
Not if I get it first.
Not if I get it first.
No one deserves anything.
You know what? What if I don't want to get
Well,
it?
that's the point. So this is what we have to worry about. But let's bring it back here. How many of you recognize, who said this quote? And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Who said that? I think, I'm going to say Lucas. I think he was the first hand.
JFK.
JFK. John F. Kennedy. Very, very, very important speech. I guarantee, I don't know what page number it's in, but it's got to be mentioned at least once or twice in the pages. All right, very, very famous speech. I do not want you to answer this vocally right now, but I want you to think about something. What does this have in common with love? Think about it. As for my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Because this is where we're going today. So some of you may have already figured it out. If you look at today's passage, Paul says, if I speak in the tongues of men and the tongues of angels, but have not love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith, so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Now, in particular, you may notice, you say, hey, wait a minute, the King James says charity. The word in the Greek is agape. Okay? Now, I'm not going to get into the whole King James thing, but some different words can mean different things. In this case, they chose to use the word charity in love. Unfortunately, I think we're about 200 years since King James, and charity is, I knew a charity, there was a girl named, she's the one that did Charity Edwards. Charity means, I do something, I'm going to be nice to you and I'm going to buy you lunch because you lost your lunch money. Charity, all right? You got somebody down the road that maybe is having some tough times, so you go and you help them. That's charity. Or I gave to a charity. So sometimes I think we think that way today. So in this case, I put the word love in there because that is the word agape. All through the 1 Corinthians 13, that's agape. So here's what we're going to look at. We are going to look at a missing part, love and service. Okay, there's something really, really important. If you're going to serve effectively, we've already seen that it's God's ministry and it's a sacrifice and it should be our focus. But there's a big missing part involving love and service. And then we're going to look at the example of Christ. It's a pretty simple outline. So, the first 3 verses of Corinthians, a missing part in love and service. When I say the word hyperbole, what does that mean? Does anybody know what that means? Let me, go ahead. Well, I don't know where, that's beyond me. I don't know what the origin word is. Let me give you an example of a hyperbole. I was so hungry Monday night on the way home, I could have eaten a whole cow.
Did you run into some of those?
Metaphor?
Well, it's metaphor, but...
No, metaphor is you're saying you are.
Yeah. Hyperbole. I was so hungry, I could eat a whole cow.
Something that's like ridiculously over
Exaggerated.
Yeah. How many of you really think I could eat a whole cow? I mean, there are days, believe me, I couldn't. There are days that I may feel like I could eat a whole cow, but after one hamburger, I'm done. Okay? So, hyperbole, it's an exaggeration. It's a ridiculous, matter of fact, it's a noun, extravagant exaggeration. All right, why is that important? Because the first 3 verses in Corinthians, Paul uses kind of a Greek form of hyperbole. You say, well, what are you talking about? Well, let's just break it down. Now, the first one is, we can spend a lot of time on the first one, but the first one, the Corinthians had a hang-up on this one, so he goes right to the jugular. He starts with the one that they're fighting with. They're fighting about. But notice, let's look really careful about what he says. And it loses something a little bit in the English, but if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but I have not love, we'll just stop there. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels and of angels. Now that doesn't really jump out at you as maybe a hyperbole, but basically in the Greek what he is saying is if I could speak all the known languages of the world, all the tongues of men, if I could speak in the tongues of men. Now, I'll give you an example. A lot of you know I work at the museum. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain knew 10 to 12 languages. He taught himself. He was gifted in language. Could he speak all the languages in the known world? No. We don't know of anybody who can speak all the known languages in the world. I mean, maybe there was somebody, I can't imagine. There are men, I've heard of men who even surpassed Chamberlain and they spoke 20 languages or more. Yeah, they're very, very good and gifted in language. But there is nobody who can speak in the tongues of men. It just can't be done. It's a hyperbole. or, humanly speaking. I suppose if somebody really wanted to, maybe they could, but there's even dialects we don't even know. There are some languages we're still learning. And then he kind of adds the icing on the cake, and he says, if I could speak the tongues of men and angels. We don't even know what, the Bible doesn't even say what their language is. So what Paul is saying here is if I could speak all the known languages, but it goes a little deeper than that. In the Greek, it carries the meaning. How many have heard of a man named Daniel Webster? Daniel Webster, we think of Webster's dictionary, was a very, very famous orator. What's an orator? Somebody tell me. We're getting a little history as well.
Like a very famous speaker.
Yeah. Oratory used to be really big. John, going back to Chamberlain, he was a professor at Bowdoin College of rhetoric and oratory. He once gave a speech in Philadelphia that was 4 hours long. 32,000 words. And we've got it. We know what it is. And everybody, this shows how many of you can pay attention for 4 hours? No, some of you can't pay attention for 5 minutes. Some of you maybe. 4 hours long. That's a long time. I really admire the man, but I don't know if I could listen to him for 4 hours long. But they were so entranced by what he said that they asked him to do it again a second time.
For 8 hours.
He was a professor of rhetoric and oratory. So what Paul is saying here in the Greek is he's saying not only if I can speak in all the tongues of men and of angels, but he says if I were a great orator. That no matter what language I spoke in, I am going to wow the crowd. Now, you have to understand the Greek culture. Oratory was very important. That's where rhetoric and oratory comes from. So what Paul is saying, listen, if I were this great orator, Daniel Webster gave a speech on the Pilgrims, a very, very famous speech. But he says, so if I had spoken all the tongues of men and of angels, a great orator, but I have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Now some of the religions, and there's still some today that do this, they celebrate with music, with cymbals and gongs. The Greeks had that in one of their temples. You would go by the temples and they would be parading in the front of the temple. And they have a band going, okay? They'd be making noise. He's saying, listen, I can be the greatest orator in all the world. There's nobody that can beat me. I can even speak in the tongues of angels. And if I am doing that and I don't have any love, then I'm just noise. Think about that a second. Think about, and Paul was a guy who desired to be the best. Let's look at verse 2. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mystery and all knowledge. Now this isn't all of verse 2. First of all, he says, if I have prophetic powers and understand, here's the hyperbole, all mysteries, all knowledge. Is there any human being that has all knowledge? No. Who does? God. Right? Basically, what Paul in a sense, he's not saying that he's God, but he's saying, listen, if I knew as much as God did, if I knew everything that there was to know, if you could come up and say, I have always wondered a great mystery of life, and you asked him a question, he would pop out with an answer. He says, if I knew all mystery, had all knowledge, it's a hyperbole. And the Greeks would have understood this, because they prided themselves in wisdom. Paul says, I can be the smartest person in the world and understand all mysteries and all knowledge. But, go on with the verse. He's not done yet. And if I have all faith, hyperbole. He says, if I have all faith to remove a mountain. How many of you believe this morning that just because I wanted to prove how strong my faith was, I moved Bradbury Mountain out to the Pacific Ocean and dropped it there? How many of you believe that? How many of you think that's absolutely crazy? Thank you, Sam Swan. No. Now, where does he get that from? Does anybody recognize that? You should.
Jesus?
Yeah. Jesus said, if you had the faith of a grain of a mustard seed, you could move a mountain. Which isn't much. I've got a grain of mustard seed. So they're really tiny. They're smaller than a BB. They're about the size of a small BB. Maybe you have it like a pellet gun. So Paul is saying, if I had all faith so I could remove mountains, plural. Remember, if I have all faith, all knowledge, interpret all mysteries, but I have not love, I am nothing. He says, listen, I could be the greatest orator, greatest speaker that ever was, and if I don't have love, then I'm just noisy. I could be the smartest person, have the greatest faith in all the world, and if I don't have love, it doesn't mean anything. You see what he's saying? Verse 3, if I gave away all that I have, hyperbole, all that I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I could gain nothing. Now this is the one that on the surface, it's like, we could probably look through history and see people that have given away all that they have and have lost their life. But in the Greek, it was interesting. It says it carries the idea of like every day you gave away everything that you had and literally fed all the people of the world. That's kind of the thought that it comes to mind. So in other words, it's almost a ridiculous, in the Greek, it's almost a ridiculous statement. He's basically saying, listen, if I gave away everything that I have all the time, every day, and personally took care of everybody, a philanthropist. And then on top of that, I gave my body to be burned, I am nothing. So here's what he's saying. I could be the best orator or the best speaker in the world. I could have the most knowledge. I could be omniscient like God. I could be a philanthropist, giving away everything that I have. I could have so much faith that I could do all kinds of miracles, even to the point of removing mountains. And if I do all those things, and there's love is not in the picture, waste of time. Big zero. It's nothing. All right, so let's take a look at the example of Christ. And this is a pretty quick example. Open up your Bibles to John chapter 13. And actually, this is where we're going to finish. John chapter 13. And we are going to start. We're going to look at verses 13 to 16, but to start with verses 13 and 14. And actually, I'm going to back up to verse 12 just to kind of pick up the thought. So after he had washed their feet and had taken his garments, and he was set down again, he said unto them, Know ye what I have done to you? Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say, Well, for so I am. If then your Lord and Master have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. Now, I have talked to a couple people, one in particular that comes very strong in my mind that has a foot fetish. And by that I mean they absolutely, feet gross them out. It really gross them out. And we've talked about this passage, and the thought of washing somebody else's feet absolutely, it's like, ugh. How many of you would say, I admit, I'm not really sure, there's some people's feet I can think of that I really wouldn't want to wash. Don't name names. All right. Well, this is the point now. You got to put yourself back in their time. These guys wore sandals, and they walk on dirty, dusty roads. And there are animals that use the same road, and let's just stop right there. Okay? Some of these people probably had some pretty stinky, smelly feet. You can just picture, where are you going today, Troy? Well, I got to go to Jerusalem. Well, you better be careful. I think I just saw James taking his herd of sheep down the road this morning. Oh. And I'm walking behind a herd of sheep, or I'm trying to pass them and I can't get by. Jokingly, people's feet are dirty. Our feet are dirty. We have socks and shoes. I showered this morning and put my socks and shoes on. But they're still going to be. I don't think you'd want to wash my feet at the end of the day.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't either. There's always one, money will do it. But what Jesus is saying is, he's saying, listen, he says, all right, let's bring it back and let's get serious. You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If then your Lord and teacher have washed your feet, you ought to also wash your feet. Stop and think of, Jesus is the creator of the world, of the universe. He is going to die for each and every one of the people in the room and people in the world. All right, God so loved the world and he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. He is the creator, he is their Lord, he is their teacher, and he's washing their feet. And he's doing it with love. He continues, for I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Jesus is saying, if I love you so much that I could wash, and I believe he would. If he was here now, I believe he could and would, if he wanted to, wash everybody's feet in this room and do it and do so lovingly. Because he loves you. But what he's saying is, if I love you like that, then you ought to love each other like that. If you go to the same chapter, we don't have time to read the whole thing. It's, I don't think by any sense of irony that he ends, at verse 35, he says, by this all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Remember everything Paul said. You can want to be the best soccer player on the field. All right? You can be, I want to be the best volleyball player. I want to be the best basketball player. I want to go to college and have, I want to be #1 on the dean's list. I want to graduate valedictorian. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to go into business and I want to make my millions by the time I'm 30. All right? You can be the best that there is, but if you're doing all of that and you don't have love, in God's eyes, everything you did isn't worth anything. And that's sobering if you think about it. He says, how does he want us to live? By this all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. That is, and I have no specific people in mind. That's everybody running to something, maybe there's something going on in the gym. I remember a few years ago I saw this. We had a planetarium. And I even remember who it is. And it was innocent, but it was the elementary, actually it was junior high class. Junior high class. We had an inflatable planetarium. It was really cool. It was put balloons, bouncy balloon kind of a thing with a planetarium, only you couldn't bounce inside it. But it was a big inflatable balloon and you went in it and he projected a planetarium. Maybe, it's been a while actually, we could probably have it again. Maybe had a good idea there. We had the whole school went through it.
You'd have to schedule it.
Yeah, we literally, to do it this year, he may not even be available. But the point is just picture the scene. Picture this verse. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. I am standing out there by the door. And it is a stampede of junior high kids, your age. And it was about the same, so it was a good-sized class at that point, if I remember correctly. It was at least around 20 kids. And they are stampeding, and when they got there, it was a shoving match, so the person could be first in line. Because they wanted to have their seat. Well, just to give you a forewarning, I do have a soft heart, all right? But I looked at that person, and I said, hey, and this is in his name, Steve. Yeah, come here. And he comes over and he stands by me and goes, what? He's getting nervous and he's looking at it. And I said, come with me. I said, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. I said, go to the end of the line. But, I said, oh, no, seriously. I said, I just watched you mow down 3 girls, 2 cats, a dog, and a moose trying to get to the first line.
Hyperbole at its best.
Hyperbole at its best. There's an English lesson. All right. But this is what Jesus is trying to say. Have you ever thought about why do we encourage people to open the door for the ladies? And by the way, ladies, say thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Gracias.
Oh, I didn't know you were allowed.
There's an infant movie.
I got time for one story, and this is a work story. I worked in the lumberyard, and we get some tough ladies that come into the lumberyard. And I had a lady that came in, and they were building, her and her husband were building a house. This is a gospel true story. She says, I want a 50-pound box of nails. I said, not a problem.
What?
So I go out and I get a 50-pound box of nails, and I put it on the counter, and I'm bringing it up. And I'm not judging her, but I just looked at her. And I said, would you like a hand getting that to the car? Ladies, take note and do not do this. She looks at me and she says, I am a woman's liver. I can do it myself.
A woman's what?
A woman's liver.
That's the old term.
Yeah, this is the 80s. In other words, I'm independent. I don't even know what independent, maybe that's what they're saying today, I don't know.
Probably the modern woman.
Yeah, the modern women's liver. So in any case, I apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by it. So she picks the nails up and kind of looks at me, and she walks over. And I'm wondering what she's going to do, because she wasn't a big, she wasn't like 250 pounds. She was, like 120 pounds. She goes over to the door, and this is back before you had these easy push, you could kind of back out. Has a doorknob. Now, I could probably take that, I know I could, because I've done it. I could take that box of nails, hold it with one hand, and turn it. I wasn't 100% sure she could. And I was like, what is she going to do? And so she goes out, and she stands there at the door, and she looks at it. Now, you would think, ladies, you would eat humble pie and say, you know what, I'm really sorry, but would you mind getting the door for me? No. She looks at me and she goes, well, you're going to just stand there and get the door for me. I did not get fired. My boss applauded me. I looked at the woman, I said, you're a woman's liver, you can do it yourself. And then I went and got the door for her. And she apologized when I went to the car. She said, I'm really sorry. What? Okay, it's a long story, but let's get serious. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples up here. You are my disciples if you love one another. Guys, open the door for ladies. Ladies, say thank you. Maybe do something in return.
Be ladies.
Be a lady. Guys, in the basketball court. Okay? Maybe it's with another team and you accidentally, and I've done this before, lay somebody out on the floor. And I did. I clocked somebody one day, and I didn't draw a lot of fouls. I went up and I helped him out. And I said, hey, sorry. I knew his name. Robbie. Sorry about that. Hey, no problem. Show compassion. All right. I was able to do this because we're wrapping up. See, this is the world's love. Remember him? This is how the world looks at things. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. This is what
Me, myself, and I.
This is what God wants. But in all seriousness, it's this. God's love is selfless. He wants us to be like this. Same person, totally different outlook on the world. Let's get serious. Remember patriotism? And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. That is love. Why? Because patriotism is loving the country more than yourself. Patriotism is selfless, often requiring sacrifice. So if you look at it on the idea of a nation, patriotism is not promoting what you want. Patriotism is doing what's best for everyone. Patriotism is laying your life down for somebody that you may not even like. Patriotism is selfless, not selfish. And if you go back to what Paul is saying, listen, you can be the best at everything that there is to be. And if you don't love, you're nothing. Jesus would say in John 10:10, the thief come but for to steal, to kill, and destroy. I am come that they might have life, and they may have it more abundantly. Selfless. Okay? So the first 3 verses, and next time we get together, we might have a special speaker next week, but the next time you see me, we're going to do the last 4 verses. The first 3 verses talk about primarily how important love is in comparison to everything else. It's not about how much you know. It's not about how good you are. It's not about what you have to offer on the table. What is significant is how much you love the person next to you. So think about that today. Random, WMSJ, I used to listen to it when I traveled more in my car, used to encourage random acts of kindness. I don't know how many cups of coffee that people would buy for me going through McDonald's. It was really cool, and I remember one day being totally, and this is we're done. This is the concluding story. If you reach out and you are kind to somebody, and you show that you love them, do you know that you can change somebody's day?
Amen.
You can. Because I was going to work, and I don't remember what was happening, but man, let me tell you, I can be the grumpy Gus. I can be that Grinch with a little heart. And there was something going on that day, and I was in a kind of a bad mood. And I was driving through McDonald's, and I ordered my coffee and my breakfast burrito, my $2 something, meal. And I get up, and the person said, "You're all set." I says, "I am. The car in front of you just paid for it." And as I looked up, it was a wave. And off they went. I have no idea who it is. But do you know, my day changed right there. It's contagious. So be kind, love people, and we'll see what the definition of love is as we go on. All right, we'll close and pray. Dear Lord, this is a powerful passage. We live in a competitive world. We want to be the best. We want to be the top, the king of the hill, the head of the totem pole, Lord. And unfortunately, with that kind of lifestyle, we put ourselves in front of other people. And what you are saying is, don't be the head, wash the feet. Don't try to be the best, be the humblest. Let somebody else go first. Do things for other people. Don't plan your day based upon you, but plan your day on how you can love other people. And ultimately speaking, that's how you judge us. Not by what we know and what we can do and how well we speak, but how well we love. Pray this all in your name. Amen. All right, you're dismissed.